Good morning, good evening and good afternoon. Today is Monday. It is also, by the way, the 1st of May. And we are also somewhere around 40 or so hours before the release of patch 10.1. Now, there have been quite a few things to talk about before the release of the season. Things like, hey, how are specs going to be doing in the next season? What do you have to do in the first week of the patch, etc., in the first season? However, there is also one other thing I can leave behind for you to help you a little bit more before the release of this patch. What I'm going to leave behind for you today is a series of resources, of links, of guides that might help you understand and keep track of what you have to do at the start of this season. Things like checking out all the possible loot from Mythic Plus bosses, from the raid bosses, all the types of new and previous embellishments and crafting options from the crafting system, as well as guides, for example, for boss mechanics or for Mythic Plus bosses and trash mobs, etc. These are quite good, quite comprehensive guides which might help you keep track of and understand more of what's coming at the start of this season. So we are starting immediately as the first recommendation for all of you with the more comprehensive of the guides. This one is gonna have literally basically anything you might be interested in. You just have to find it in the large amount of pages that are available for you to check in this guide from Amzeus, which I already recommended previously in the first version of this guide at the beginning of Dragonflight. This guide is very comprehensive. You know, it has the starting, you know, TLDR quick guide telling you what's gonna be new and what's gonna be introduced in the season, but then it can keep going deeper and deeper. For example, more extra explanation on what's gonna be going down as new things in Mythic Plus, as well as some quick and easy explanation about the new type of gear upgrading that's coming in 10.1. But then it can get more in-depth, it can get more technical, like for example, the gearing plan, what to do, you know, how to spread out all the crests you're going to be looting for your gearing upgrade in the first 3 or so weeks of the new patch to make sure you get yourself to 440 plus item level. There is also the more laid back type of gearing plan for, you know, for alt characters and characters with less time to play than your main. This guide can also help quite a lot of players. You also have info about things like loot. This is the whole, you know, the whole comprehensive list of where everything drops, at what level, the boss ones in the raid, as well as the ones from Mythic Plus at all the different key levels. You can get a compilation of every single possible Mythic Plus item, right? If you want to see where are my plate helms, where are my one-handed weapons, you can just find them down in here. Same goes, of course, for the raid, plenty of lists about all of the loot available from the raid. And then same goes, of course, for the crafted gear, and more details about Season 2 crafting with all the current and new recipes that will come out in 10.1. And even more extra info, this one a bit more in-depth for raiding, because you're also gonna get some guides, some explanations of boss mechanics for the raids in Aberros that you can check out in this guide. And it's also currently being updated with the best in slot lists for each of the specs. At the moment, it's done all the way through the tank specs and will continue to be upgraded for in future versions for the other specs in the game. So this one right here is definitely the more in-depth guide. If you are interested in basically anything from the patch, this one can tell you more or less everything you want to know about. However, what if you are interested in something a bit more specific, not really everything under the sun? Something like, for example, the guide that we also checked a few days ago, in part from Amasoful, about the itemization in Season 2. This one is much more in-depth, specifically about Mythic Plus, raid and crafting loot, and what to do with all of that. This is what we looked at a few days ago, the more comprehensive of the spreadsheets about where to find the loot, where to find the different item levels, the different crests for each of the item levels that you can loot in the game in Season 2. This one can definitely help you understand a little bit more what to do with the gear you are gonna be looting in Season 2, and then, much like the previous guide, even more in-depth info about the loot. This one is from the raid. All of the items, for the record, are fully clickable to get your link from Wowhead about the item itself. They are also already pointing out the main stats of the items you are looking at. You also have extra in-depth info right here. If you just wanted to know, very quickly, all of the main stats of all of the specs in the game, you can just check them very, very easily right here. You can do more or less the same for the Mythic Plus items, checking all of the available Mythic Plus items, as well as the quick guide on what item level are going to be dropping at depending on the key. And then same for crafting item, even more in-depth, showing you all of the different crafted items, all of the different new embellishments, the new enchants, etc., that you can find from crafting. What the guide will also do is give you some more ideas of what to do in your first month, basically, of the patch, what to do with your gear, with your crests that you are looting to try to maximize your upgrade, your gear upgrade at the start of the season. So this is also a very good guide, perhaps a bit more in-depth if you're into, the competitive PvE side of the patch. This is the one that is overall the more comprehensive of the guides. We then have something quite strictly Mythic Plus related, because it's the guide from Gallia GG about the mechanics available in the upcoming season of Mythic Plus, with all of the 8 new dungeons compared to Season 1, pointing out all of the casts, all of the abilities used by all of the trash mobs, for example, and whether or not they can be interrupted, or if they can't be interrupted, then you have to stop them with other types of crowd control, as well as some quick, fast, and easy tips to understand about the bosses of all of the new dungeons in Mythic Plus. This can also be quite handy as you start your new set of dungeons in the season, going from one new dungeon to the next, about getting the first ideas of what to do in each of the dungeons, provided you still remember something from the first few weeks of Dragonflight where you did Mythic Zeros, for example, of these dungeons. You might still remember a few of the things, but when you enter Mythic Plus keys at a very high level, some previous mechanics you completely ignored start actually hurting much more. So you might be surprised about the danger of some of the abilities that end up being deadly in a plus 20 fortified key, for example, compared to the Mythic Zero version. So this one will help you more in Mythic Plus specifically as a guide. And then you have the complete opposite. This one is the guide more focused on Mythic Plus, and this one is the one more focused on the raid. This is from Questionably Epic, which is a site that can already give you a good amount of resources for healers. But this one is not just for healers, this one is for everyone, as it gives you more info, more details about each of the bosses in a nice, clean, easy to understand and to read guide, both from a point of view of mechanics, of what each mechanics are doing, etc., but also about positioning, about what to do in the different phases, for example, where you should position, as well as all of the mechanics, the more dangerous mechanics, etc. So this one is a more in-depth guide about raiding, essentially. If you want to get ready before your guild gets into into normal or into heroic in the first week of the season, this is a more or less quick and easy guide to understand. If you are more of a simpleton and you don't want to read nearly as much, as a reminder, we do have the usual guide from Mythic Trap, which has way more GIFs and way more images and videos about all of the different mechanics and what to do, which should be coming out around tomorrow. By May the 2nd, basically, by the release of the actual patch, the guides from Mythic Trap should also be coming out about the raid. So that's another resource for you to prepare yourself before entering the raid, and not be the guy that makes your raid wipe because he knows nothing and wants to learn by wiping everyone else. Instead, just look at this beforehand. I thought all of these in the end are quite helpful guides, in particular given what players have been reacting to when it comes to the gear upgrade system of Season 2. Many have pointed out how complicated, how convoluted it looks like. So These guides are also going to help you try to manage your upgrading of your gear, how to handle the crests you are going to be looting. What about the Sparks of Shadow Flame? Basically our new version of the Sparks of Ingenuity that we have to use to craft the gear, and what to do with these sparks and what to craft, when to craft, etc, etc. These guides are going to be quite helpful in that regard, as well as you can keep these guides bookmarked, you know, if you want to get a quick look at, for example, all of the loot table from Mythic Plus, all of the loot table from the raid, the spreadsheet about the crests and where do they drop at which Mythic Plus key level, etc, etc. These are all going to be quite the helpful guides at the start of the season. Of course, you know, later on in a few weeks you might just remember these things by yourself, you might have them memorized, but for the start of the season, when everything is new, these might help you keep track of all of these new things much better. So you can go in the links I will be providing to you below in the description to check out these guides if you feel like they are for you to have at the release of this patch. And with this being said, I'm going to leave you to the rest of your eve of the launch of the patch. Thanks, of course, for all of the support given by my Patreon supporters, for the help and the contribution to the growth. You can still, as usual, if you don't want to spend any money, much like I wouldn't, you can support by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself, or following me over on Twitter, as well as following me over on my stream on Twitch, which will be going live soon enough for the release of patch 10.1. So, thank you guys again for watching, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, oh my god, I got this ninja headache out of nowhere this evening. It was brutal. Thankfully, as I made this video, it went away. So, good.